Good afternoon, everybody, and I'm Dr. Poonam Dani, and our today's topic for the class is oxygen transport. We know that we take oxygen from the lungs or the alveolus of the lungs, and finally, this oxygen is transported to the tissues by the blood. Today, we will be learning about how this oxygen is transported by the blood. Is the gas is directly dissolved in the blood, or there is something else which is helping the oxygen to be transported. Okay, now first look at the amount of oxygen present in different portions of the air and blood in our body. You can see that in the inspired air, the partial pressure of oxygen or PO2 is 158 mmHg and the oxygen content is 21 ml per deciliter. Expired air has 116 mmHg of partial pressure of oxygen and the oxygen content is 16 ml per dl. Alveolar air has 100 to 104 mmHg of partial pressure of oxygen and the oxygen content is 13 to 14 ml per dl. Now coming to the arterial and venous blood. In the arterial blood, you can see the partial pressure of oxygen is about 98 to 100 mmHg, while the oxygen content is 19 ml per deciliter. In the venous blood, the partial pressure is 40, which is which leads to about 14 ml of oxygen, 14 ml per deciliter of oxygen. From the table, you can make an inference that for each 100 ml of inspired air, about 5 ml or 21 to 16 ml per deciliter of oxygen is extracted by the blood. And for each 100 ml of arterial blood, about 5 ml means 19 minus 14 ml per deciliter of oxygen is extracted by the tissues. See how this cycle is going on. From the heart, the blood is being pumped to the um, pulmonary vessels where there is oxygenation going on, and the oxygenated blood is coming to the left heart. The left heart is pumping the whole oxygenated blood to whole of the body, and then finally the blood is coming back from the venous circulation. Okay, in between this, from the arterial to venous blood, there is a transition, that is the capillary vessels, which is responsible for the offloading of the oxygen at the tissue level. Now come to the modes of oxygen transport. In the beginning only I have said that oxygen is being transported via the blood, but how the blood is transporting it? Is the oxygen is directly dissolved in blood, or something else mechanism is there? From we can see the oxygen is transported from lungs to the tissues in two method. One is physical dissolution in the plasma, and the second one in combination with hemoglobin in the red cell. Approximately 98% of the oxygen is transported along with hemoglobin, in combination with hemoglobin, and the remaining 2% is physically dissolved form. Oxygen in arterial blood is 20 ml per 100 ml, and while in venous blood is 15 ml of oxygen per 100 ml. So about 5 ml per 100 ml of blood is transported from lungs to the tissues. Joseph Priestley, a British scientist, had isolated the component of air which was later called oxygen, and that showed that it is essential for life. He observed that plants release it even underwater. So he has done a major discovery of oxygen, isn't it? Joseph Priestley. See how the oxygen is being transported. Molecular oxygen carried in blood, about 1.5% is dissolved in plasma. 98.5% is loosely bound to each iron of hemoglobin in RBC. And finally, each iron molecule of hemoglobin is carrying the oxygen. See this portion. The hemoglobin is carrying each end of the hemoglobin is carrying one molecule of oxygen. Now coming to the portion of physically dissolved form of oxygen. In the physically dissolved form in plasma, only about 2% of oxygen is transported. The amount of physically dissolved oxygen in the blood can be predicted from Henry's law. Henry's law states that the amount of gas that dissolves in a liquid at a given temperature is proportional to the partial pressure of the gas. Means as you increase the pressure of the gas, more and more gas will be dissolved in that particular temperature. Thus, the quantity of dissolved oxygen in arterial blood is calculated from the following equation. Dissolved oxygen equal to oxygen solubility into partial pressure of oxygen in arterial blood equal to 0.003 ml per deciliter of blood per mmHg into 95 mmHg. Normal partial pressure of oxygen is 95 mmHg, and this comes to about dissolved oxygen is about 0.3 ml per deciliter of blood. See, this partial pressure is contributed only by the oxygen that is present in the blood, not in the tissues level. Okay. Thus, at partial pressure 95 mmHg, the dissolved oxygen content is 0.3 ml per deciliter. That means in a normal healthy adult, zero point 0.3 ml of oxygen is transported in dissolved form in 100 ml of blood. As cardiac output is 5 liters per minute at rest, oxygen transported will be, how much oxygen will be transported? That will be 5 liters into zero point 0.3 ml. This will come to about 15 ml per minute. Okay. Therefore, oxygen transported in dissolved form alone is grossly inadequate the oxygen requirement of the body, which is about 250 ml per minute at rest. So you see, but by just the dissolved form of oxygen, we will not be able to sustain our life even at rest. Okay, but you see, this dissolved oxygen has one advantage for us also. As per Henry's law, dissolved gas is proportional to partial pressure of oxygen. So there is no limit for this transport as long as partial pressure is high. So if at room temperature, when the partial pressure is 95 mmHg, and when we increase the partial pressure, we can increase the dissolved form of oxygen in the blood, and this is the basis of the treatment of hyperbaric oxygen we give in the indoor patient or in patient with ICU patients who have difficulty in breathing, because you can't increase the limit of the other forms. We can increase the by this form, by increasing the pressure, you can increase the amount of oxygen transported by the dissolved mechanism. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy improves tissue oxygenation. Though 0.3 ml of oxygen is transported in dissolved form in 100 ml of blood, when 100% oxygen is inhaled in hyperbaric chamber, the dissolved oxygen is about 6 ml per deciliter of blood. that accounts for supply of about 300 ml per minute, which is adequate for tissue oxygenation, isn't it? Okay. Now the second method of transportation is in combination with hemoglobin. Before studying this portion, in this category we will be learning about oxygenation of hemoglobin, oxygen carrying capacity of hemoglobin, oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve, shift of oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve, concept of P50 and its significance, oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve of fetal hemoglobin, effect of carbon monoxide on transport of oxygen, and oxygen dissociation curve for myoglobin. These all points are we are going to learn now. Okay. Now coming to the transport of oxygen in combination with hemoglobin. We know that about 98% of oxygen is transported in combination with hemoglobin. This is possible because there is an affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen, and this is known as the binding affinity of hemoglobin. Hemoglobin that binds with oxygen is called oxyhemoglobin, and the hemoglobin that does not bind with oxygen is called has not been bound with oxygen is known as deoxyhemoglobin or reduced hemoglobin. Oxygen combining with hemoglobin to form loose and reversible bond. This is oxygenation and not oxidation. In normal chemical reaction, when the oxygen is bound to any element, then there is the process is known as oxidation. But here that oxygen doesn't make a solid bond with the hemoglobin. It forms a loose and reversible bond, and so this process is known as oxygenation and not oxidation. Why? And this converts to deoxyhemoglobin. This convert deoxyhemoglobin into oxyhemoglobin, and the time taken from for the conversion of deoxyhemoglobin to oxyhemoglobin is about 0.1 second. Okay. The hemoglobin molecule is a protein made up of four subunits, you all know this, that are bound together. Each subunit consists of a molecular group known as heme and a polypeptide attached to the heme. The four polypeptide of a hemoglobin molecule are combinedly known as globin. Now, each heme group contains one atom of iron which binds to oxygen. See the structure. Here there is one ferrous iron in the center and the rest is globin portion. Okay. See, this is one end or one arm of the hemoglobin, and like this there are four arms, and the four arms together they form one hemoglobin. 1 gram of hemoglobin binds with about 1.34 ml of oxygen. 100 ml blood containing hemoglobin contains hemoglobin about 15 gram percent will bind to about 20.1 ml of oxygen. But due to different shunts, there is a decrease in the amount, and there is 19.8 ml only, out of which 0.3 ml is present in dissolved form and 19.5 ml is present as oxyhemoglobin form. Since each iron atom can bind one molecule of oxygen, a single hemoglobin molecule can bind four molecules of oxygen. Hemoglobin binds with oxygen only when the iron is in ferrous state. The ferrous iron in hemoglobin is oxidized to ferric iron, and this will form methemoglobin. Thus, methemoglobin can't bind oxygen. Methemoglobin formation occurs under the influence of various compounds like nitrites or sulfonamides. Methemoglobin are also formed spontaneously. However, the enzyme methemoglobin reductase is present in red cells that reduces methemoglobin to hemoglobin. Therefore, normally only about 1.5% of total hemoglobin is present as methemoglobin. When there is a deficiency of methemoglobin reductase, this is a genetic defect. There is increase in methemoglobin concentration and this will decrease the oxygen carrying capacity. Oxygen binds rapidly and reversibly to hemoglobin to form oxyhemoglobin. This is the formula. Now, what is the disadvantage of this process of oxygen transport? In the previous form, you see in which the oxygen was transported by dissolving in plasma, there only 2% is being transported in dissolved form. Why? Why not whole of the oxygen that is required by our tissues is transported by dissolved form? What is the requirement of this hemoglobin system? You see, in this hemoglobin transportation by hemoglobin system, there is one disadvantage. The only disadvantage with this method is there is a ceiling to this method. Means when all of the hemoglobin molecules are loaded with oxygen, then you can't increase the amount of oxygen to be transported. So there is a limit. Percent saturation is of entire hemoglobin molecule is fixed. You can't increase this saturation or transportation by this method. While by the dissolved oxygen method, you can increase the transportation of oxygen by increasing the pressure. Then if that process had that advantage, why 98% of oxygen is being transported by hemoglobin through hemoglobin? This we will be learning in further slides. Okay. See, hemoglobin is present in in the two states in the RBC. The states are known as R state and T state. During the process of hemoglobin oxyhemoglobin formation, the heme remains in ferrous state. Thus, the process is oxygenation, not oxidation. As there are 4 units of hemoglobin molecule, hemoglobin reacts rapidly in less than 0.01 second with 4 molecules of oxygen to form HbO2. When oxygen is not bound with hemoglobin or the hemoglobin is in deoxyhemoglobin state, the 4 subunits of hemoglobin are tightly bound with each other. This state is known as T state or tense state. This T configuration affinity of hemoglobin has less affinity for oxygen. When first oxygen molecule binds with hemoglobin, the 4 subunits enter into the relaxed or R state. This exposes more oxygen binding sites. Therefore, in R configuration, affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen is greatly increased by 200 to 500 times. When partial pressure of oxygen is less, most of the hemoglobin molecule are in T state and have low oxygen affinity. When PO2 is very high, the hemoglobin molecule are in R state and have high oxygen affinity. So you can see there are 2 states of hemoglobin, the T state and the R state. T state or the tense state and R state or the relaxed state. T state has less affinity for oxygen, while R state has greatly increased oxygen affinity. Now, thus the quantity of oxyhemoglobin formation is a function of partial pressure of oxygen in the blood, isn't it? Here also, partial pressure of oxygen is playing a role in increasing the affinity of the hemoglobin to the oxygen. Whenever there is decreased partial pressure, the affinity of the hemoglobin will decrease, and when there is increased partial pressure, affinity of hemoglobin in increase. How this will play a important role in our body? In the near the alveolus or in the pulmonary vessels where the partial pressure of oxygen is very high, the affinity of hemoglobin will increase and more of oxygen will be loaded by the hemoglobin, and most of the hemoglobin will come to R state. Now, when this R state hemoglobin reaches the tissue level, at the tissue level there is decreased partial pressure. What will happen? The affinity of the hemoglobin to the oxygen will reduce and the R state will come return back to T state, and thus the oxygen which was loaded in the lungs will be offloaded in the tissues and oxygen will reach the tissues. Okay. In pulmonary capillaries, where partial pressure of oxygen is high, the reaction favors to form more oxyhemoglobin. And in tissue capillaries, where PO2 is low, the reaction favors formation of deoxyhemoglobin that helps oxygen to be unloaded from the hemoglobin and becomes available to the cells. Oxygen carrying capacity of hemoglobin. Each gram of hemoglobin binds with 1.3 ml of oxygen. The maximum amount of oxygen that can be carried by hemoglobin is called the oxygen carrying capacity. In a healthy individual, the oxygen carrying capacity of arterial blood is about 20 ml of oxygen per 100 ml of blood, considering the hemoglobin concentration of 15 gram percent. Oxygen content of hemoglobin is the amount of oxygen actually bound to hemoglobin, whereas oxygen capacity of hemoglobin is the amount of oxygen that can potentially bind with hemoglobin. The percent saturation of hemoglobin with oxygen is the ratio of the quantity of oxygen actually bound to the quantity that can be potentially bound multiplied by 100. Okay. Now coming to oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. When relation between PO2 and percentage of hemoglobin saturation is plotted on the graph, we get oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. It shows that percent of hemoglobin saturation increases with increase in PO2, but this relationship is not linear. Instead, it has an S shape, or this is also known as sigmoid curve. Oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve, also known as oxygen hemoglobin equilibrium curve, explains the relationship between partial pressure of oxygen in blood with oxygen saturation of hemoglobin. Oxyhemoglobin equilibrium curve is an S-shaped curve over the range of PO2 from 0 to 100 mmHg. The sigmoid shape of curve results from hemoglobin affinity for oxygen at various partial pressure levels. As PO2 rises, the hemoglobin saturation progressively rises. However, the saturation is not linear, with increase in PO2 for which the curve becomes sigmoid shape. The S-shaped oxyhemoglobin equilibrium curve enables oxygen to saturate hemoglobin under high partial pressure in the lungs and to give up large amount of oxygen with small changes in PO2 at tissue level. Now, what is the cause of this sigmoid curve? The cause is that as the oxygen attaches to one molecule of heme, there is an increased affinity for the second molecule. When the second molecule is bound, there is further increase in the for the affinity of the third. Similarly, when there is the offloading of oxygen, the affinity uh, decreases. When one molecule of oxygen combines with hemoglobin, affinity of hemoglobin increases and so on. This is called cooperative binding kinetics. Due to this, only oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve is sigmoid. You can see that as there is binding of one oxygen molecule, there is an increase in affinity for the binding of second molecule, and there is more number of oxygen is bound. When there is further increase the affinity increases more. Okay. Note that at PO2 of 27 mmHg, hemoglobin saturation of oxygen is 50%. This is known as P50, and we will be discussing about P50 in further slides. The curve is divided into two major phases, the steep phase and the plateau phase. What is this steep phase and the plateau phase? The curve has a steep slope between partial pressure of 10 to 60 mmHg. During this phase of the curve, combination of oxygen with hemoglobin increases very rapidly as the PO2 increases from 10 to 60 mmHg. Oxygen saturation of hemoglobin is about 90% at PO2 of 60 mmHg. In the steep phase, oxygen saturation of hemoglobin is very high. Less increase in PO2 leads to greater percentage of saturation of hemoglobin, and therefore this facilitates oxygen loading. Also, change in steep portion of the curve in reverse direction, that is from 60 to mmHg, causes unloading of oxygen in the tissue. So, a small decrease in PO2 in the tissue level results in large amount of oxygen unloading to the tissues. The steep phase allows large quantities of oxygen to be released from hemoglobin in the tissue capillaries where a lower capillary PO2 prevails. This is especially achieved by shifting the curve to right. Shift occurs mainly on the steep phase by increased H plus or increased CO2. Now coming to the plateau phase, the curve begins to plateau at PO2 of around 60 mmHg and flattens at PO2 of 70 mmHg. The increase in PO2 above 60 mmHg produces only a small increase in oxygen binding. Because you have seen up to PO2 of 60, 90% of hemoglobin is saturated. So after 60 mmHg of PO2, only 10% of hemoglobin is remaining for saturation. So there is a plateau from this stage. Increase in PO2 from 60 to mmHg in the plateau region of the curve illustrate that oxygen saturation and content remains apparently constant over a wide alteration in alveolar PO2. Now, what is the significance of plateau phase? There are two significances of plateau phase. In different situations like in high altitude or in pulmonary disease in which a moderate hypoxia means a decrease in PO2 from 95 to 60 mmHg occurs, the total amount of oxygen carried by hemoglobin decreases only by 5 to 10%, isn't it? Because you can see the plateau begins from about PO2 of 60 mmHg. From 60 to 100, there is a flat phase, plateau phase. and the oxygen saturation remaining is only 10%. The total amount of oxygen carried by the hemoglobin decreases only by 5 to 10% since hemoglobin saturation is about 90% at PO2 of 60 mmHg. Thus, plateau in the curve provides a safety factor through which even a significant decrease in lung function can allow normal saturation of hemoglobin and uh, normal tissue oxygenation. Now, oxygen saturation and content remain fairly constant in spite of wide fluctuation in alveolar PO2. For example, if PO2 rises from 100 to 120 mmHg, hemoglobin saturation increases only slightly from 97 to, you see from this graph, there is a flattening in this portion. Now, you see that plateau starts from about this stage. Plateau is starting, and till this stage 90% of 90% of hemoglobin is saturated, and from here only 10% is remaining. And in case of when there is 100, if you increase the partial pressure from 100 to 120, then oxygen saturation will increase only from 97 to 98%, isn't it? This is the reason why oxygen content cannot be raised appreciably by hyperventilation or by breathing 100% oxygen, because hemoglobin is already completely saturated with oxygen at PO2 of 100 mmHg. This is true only for normal people at sea level. So, this is also true for normal people who do normal people so doesn't require any kind of, if there is uh, if the SpO2 is showing 97 to 98%, then you can't increase the saturation by inhaling oxygen, because there is no hemoglobin left to carry the extra hemoglobin. If a person has low arterial PO2 due to lung disease or for his accession to high altitude, hyperventilation or breathing 100% oxygen increases hemoglobin saturation with oxygen, as they have more deoxyhemoglobin initially. Okay? The P50 is the level of PO2 at which 50% of hemoglobin is saturated with oxygen. P50 assesses the binding affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen. In adults at sea level, the normal P50 occurs at a PO2 of 25 to 27 mmHg. Alteration in the P50 value has a greater impact on the steep phase of the curve. If the P50 is high, it signifies the decrease in affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen, which is seen in right shift of the oxygen hemoglobin equilibrium curve. Conversely, if P50 is low, it signifies shift of the curve to the left, in which affinity of oxygen is more. See, this is your normal curve. When the curve shifts to right, what is the P50? P50 is about 50 mmHg. And when there is shift in left, then you can see the this is about 15 mmHg. Okay. Right shift of oxygen dissociation curve. Right shift and left shift. First we will discuss about left shift. Left shift of in this increases the affinity of oxygen. When there is left shift, this is the left shift. Means you are plotting the graph and towards your left hand side. If the graph is shifting towards your left hand side, then it is known as shift to left. When the graph curve is shifting towards your right hand side, then it is known as right shift. So when there is shift to left means there is an increase of affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen. See, if the graph will be shifted to left, what will happen at PO2 of 30 mmHg? How much oxyhemoglobin is saturated? About 60 mmHg. When there is right shift at PO2 of 40 mmHg, the percentage of oxyhemoglobin will be 50%. So, what are the causes of left shift? Left shift is decreased temperature, decrease H plus content or increase in acidity, decrease 2,3-DPG, carbon monoxide and fetal hemoglobin. These are the causes responsible for shifting the graph to the left. And causes for right shift are increased temperature, increased 2,3-DPG and increase in H plus content. How oxygen dissociation curve of fetal hemoglobin is responsible for left shift? Fetal hemoglobin has much higher affinity for oxygen. What is the benefit of this? Because you know that partial pressure of oxygen in fetal blood is about 70%. So at 70% partial pressure, hemoglobin has to upload the oxygen. This will happen only when the hemoglobin will be having higher affinity, then only it will be able to take up the oxygen. So fetal hemoglobin has a higher affinity for oxygen and this helps to upload oxygen even at lower partial pressures. So fetal hemoglobin, what it does, it shifts the curve to the left as its affinity for, and it also has a decreased affinity for 2,3-DPG in regarding the adult hemoglobin. So its affinity to combine with oxygen is more than the adult hemoglobin. Okay. So but if it has higher affinity for oxygen, how it is able to supply the fetal tissue? Since fetal tissues have less requirement of oxygen, so this affinity of fetal hemoglobin to oxygen is sufficient to upload the oxygen in lower partial pressure, and also it is the amount of oxygen given to the fetal tissues is also sufficient. Okay, but fetal hemoglobin will not be able to suffice in adult life. Effect of carbon monoxide. What does carbon monoxide does? Carbon monoxide, this also combines with hemoglobin and forms carboxyhemoglobin, and this decreases the functional hemoglobin concentration and decreases oxygen tension and oxygen transport. Okay. See here the graph is getting smaller. Now, factors affecting hemoglobin binding affinity with oxygen. The important factors are the temperature, arterial PCO2, arterial pH, and 2,3-DPG. A rise in PCO2, a fall in pH, a rise in temperature all shift the curve to the right. The effect of carbon dioxide and hydrogen ions on the affinity of the hemoglobin for oxygen is known as the Bohr effect. It is very important for your exam. Do um, study it many times, then only the concept will be cleared, and be clear in this Bohr effect very clearly. If any confusion any of you are having in this Bohr effect, please do ask. A shift of the oxyhemoglobin equilibrium curve to the right is physiologically advantageous at the tissue level, as affinity of oxygen for hemoglobin is lowered at the tissue level. A rightward shift enhances the unloading of oxygen for given PO2 in the tissues, and a leftward shift increases the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen, thereby lowering the ability of the to release oxygen to the tissue. A simple way to remember the functional importance of this shift is that an exercising muscle is warm and acidic and produces large amount of carbon dioxide, high PCO2, all of which favor the unloading of more oxygen to metabolically active muscles. Increase in temperature also shift the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve to right, and decrease in temperature shift the curve to the left. In other words, high temperature decreases the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen and will more and more unloading of the oxygen. This helps in release of oxygen in metabolically active tissues in which temperature is more. So comparing the situation in which you have temperature decrease, as the temperature is decreased, the hemoglobin affinity for oxygen will increase and it will not be able to release the oxygen to the tissues. So when you go in colder areas, colder or more cold, when you go to the colder area, the oxygen present in your body is enough. There is enough oxygen in your blood, but the hemoglobin is unable to transfer this oxygen to the tissues, and the tissues will die in the in absence of oxygen, even when oxygen is present in sufficient amount in the blood. This is similar to the situation in which you are present in a sea. If you are present in a sea, there is water everywhere, but not a drop to drink, isn't it? Then this is a similar situation of that. Now coming to the effect of temperature on the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve, you can see the curve as the temperature is increased, there is the shifting of the rightward shift of the curve, and when the temperature is decreased, there is leftward shifting of the curve. pH alteration in blood pH shift the oxygen dissociation curve. Christian Bohr and Neil Bohr in 1904 demonstrated that respiratory acidosis shifts oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve to right. Since then, the decrease in oxygen affinity in acidosis is known as Bohr effect. A decrease in pH shift the curve to right, and increase in pH shift the curve to left. When blood passes through capillaries, CO2 enters red cells that decreases intracellular pH and shift the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve to right. It has been noted that normal physiological condition binding of about 0.7 mole of H plus causes hemoglobin to release 1 mole of oxygen. Thus, when blood passes through tissue capillaries, the acidic environment facilitates release of oxygen from hemoglobin into the tissues. See, you can see the change in the graph as you increase the pH. The the graph is shifting to the right, and when you decrease the pH, no, opposite, other way around. When you are increasing the pH, the graph is shifting to the left. When you decrease the pH, graph is shifting to the right. Now, one thing more, what is the role of 2,3-DPG? What does this does? 2,3-DPG is a compound that is a product of glycolysis and is plentiful in RBC. It is highly charged anion that binds to the beta chain of the deoxyhemoglobin. It competes with oxygen for binding sites on the hemoglobin molecule, and therefore at a given partial pressure of oxygen, the percentage saturation of hemoglobin with oxygen will be reduced in the presence of 2,3-DPG. Thus, when there is active muscle, so more and more of 2,3-DPG is produced. So more and more of 2,3-DPG will compete with oxygen for the binding site, and more of oxygen will be unloaded, and the 2,3-DPG will get attached to the hemoglobin. So this is the role of 2,3-DPG. When there is decrease in pH, pH decreases, 2,3-DPG increases, and there is increased unloading of oxygen. Okay. Now see the oxygen dissociation curve for myoglobin. Myoglobin is present in muscle and is specialized for sustained contraction. Dissociation curve is rectangular hyperbola as it takes oxygen at low pressure readily, but it doesn't dislodge. This is the basic funda. It does not show Bohr effect. At PO2 40 mmHg, it is 95% saturation and hemoglobin saturation is 75%. It acts like a temporary storehouse of oxygen. The oxygen binding curves of myoglobin and hemoglobin with respect to the percent saturation of oxygen and pressure is shown in this graph. Okay. Now, how much oxygen is released at rest? Oxygen delivery, normal oxygen delivery is about 1 liter per minute. Oxygen consumption is about 5 ml per 100 ml per minute. So total is about 250 ml per minute. Oxygen consumption is about 250 ml per minute. What is utilization coefficient? Utilization coefficient is percent of oxygen consumed out of the oxygen delivered to the tissue. This can be calculated by oxygen taken up by tissues divided by oxygen content of arterial blood, and it comes to about 5 divided by 19, and it comes to about 26%. Okay. Now, oxygen released during exercise. What will happen during exercise? There will be decrease in pH, there will be increase in temperature, increase in PCO2, increase in 2,3-DPG. So what will be there? There will be shift to right of the sigmoid curve, and this is called as Bohr effect. So oxygen released during exercise depends on the severity of the exercise. Delivery of oxygen is increased by increase of blood flow due to increased cardiac output, local arteriolar dilatation, increase in open capillaries, increase RBC content due to splenic contraction, and finally there will be increase in release of oxygen by right shift of the curve. Okay. Thank you. Have a good day. Do learn this topic number of times unless and until it gets very clear in your head. Okay. Thank you.